The Roosevelt I Knew by Francis Perkins. The Viking Press, 1946. Preamble. Franklin Roosevelt was not a simple man. That quality of simplicity which we delight to think marks the great and noble was not his. He was the most complicated human being I ever knew, and out of this complicated nature there sprang much of the drive which brought achievement, much of the sympathy which made him like and liked by such oddly different types of people, much of the detachment which enabled him to forget his problems in play or rest, and much of the apparent contradiction which so exasperated those associates of his who expected crystal clear and unwavering decisions. But this very complication of his nature made it possible for him to have insight and imagination into the most varied human experiences, and this he applied to the physical, social, geographical, economic, and strategic circumstances thrust upon him as responsibilities by his times. He was capable of almost childish vanity about his skill in catching fish, his seamanship in small boats, his exploits in teasing Winston Churchill, and in making Stalin laugh and unbend. And at the same time, he could be unself-consciously humble and ask the advice of a most casual visitor about some problem he could not solve. He enjoyed the gay, boisterous, and sometimes silly fellows with whom he went on fishing trips. The reason was not only, quote, no mental strain, end quote, as a keen columnist discerned. He really liked the banter and teasing. He used the same coin of personal fun-making when he sat down to talk with a group of labor leaders. Some of them are deadly serious men, or humorless, and were bothered by it. Many loved it and felt warm and included by it. Many books will be written about Franklin Roosevelt, but no two will give the same picture, for no two people saw the same thing in him. The variety and conflict of the pictures will be startling. It will be many years before a definitive biography and true appraisal of Franklin Roosevelt is written. People who knew him and lived in his times are too close to him and too partisan about him, either for or against, to have the necessary objectivity. Those who knew him and his times will write what they knew, saw, felt, and understood about him. It will be source material for future historians. It will surely encourage people to continue their own efforts to overcome handicaps and to develop themselves as individuals. But even more important, it will encourage them to seek greater social justice and higher standards of living in the corporate life of our country. This book about Roosevelt is not a biography. It is biased in his favor. I agree with most of his positions and policies and worked for many years to help develop, spread, and establish them in action. I am bound to him by ties of affection, common purpose, and joint undertakings. All doubts have been resolved in his favor. Despite his shortcomings, I, on the whole, respect the methods he used to handle his problems and develop his strength. He was many things, not clear, not simple, with drives and compulsions in a dozen different directions, with curiosity sending him from one field and experience to another, with imagination making it possible for him to identify himself, at least partly and temporarily, with widely different phenomena and people. There was undoubted conflict within him. He was all these things: the rich man's friend, the poor man's brother, the stern Puritan conscience, the easygoing, indulgent, and forgiving friend of the irregulars. These conflicts, however, did not result in neurotic stagnation, but in life and movement in many directions, and shrewd planning kept them from ruining one another. Without these conflicts in Roosevelt's thinking and feeling, there would have been less action. He responded to one impulse, was checked by another. By diverting two conflicting impulses and starting something new, he compounded or made compromises out of both. In this way, opposition dropped off and progress was made. This was never wholly conscious on his part. Out of these impulses, interests, curiosities, and sympathies came the dynamic quality which made movement, action, and creative living possible for him. The core of Roosevelt's character was viability, a capacity for living and growing that remained to his dying day. It accounts for his rise from a rather unpromising young man to a great man, not merely a president, but a man who so impressed upon him his time that he can never be forgotten and will be loved as a symbol of hope and social justice long after his generation and his works have passed away. One cannot predict what Roosevelt would have said or done in the post-war world. It is unfortunate that already there may be growing a rigid Roosevelt legend. Some are expressing quite personal ideas as if they were definitely what Roosevelt wanted, and urging them as a guide for the present and future in political and international action. I wonder if they know what he would have done. He was essentially adaptable to new circumstances, always quick to understand the changing needs and hopes of the people, and to vary his action to meet changing situations. Methods which he pursued in the past are not necessarily what he would have used today. He made an indelible impression on his own country and on the world, changing the direction of political thought through knowledge of human needs and suffering and emphasis upon the provision of the good life for the common man. He grew to greatness by a full utilization of all of his talent and personality. He began where he was and used what he had. He ignored his handicaps, both physical and intellectual, and let nothing hinder him from doing the work he had to do in the world. He was not born great, but he became great. The words most often on his lips to describe what he regarded as the good democratic society were, quote, free, end quote, fair, end quote, and, quote, decent, end quote. To his dying day, he held the philosophy that, quote, if you treat people right, they will treat you right 90% of the time, end quote. He left no political system, no basis for a cult. Some of his personal rules of life remain, and they will offer guidance and inspiration to many. Never let fear rise. Take constructive action with whatever capacities are available. Be flexible in all dealings with human beings. Overcome unnecessary discouragement and gloom by laughter and by faith. Quote, move forward with a strong and active faith, end quote. He wrote on his last day, as on his first day in office as president, he had said, quote, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, end quote. He learned to love people, and they returned it. Seldom has a man been so beloved within his own generation. On the night he died, a young soldier stood in the silent group which clustered for comfort around the White House where he had lived. The young soldier sighed as I nodded to him, and, still looking at the house, he said, quote, I felt as if I knew him. A pause. I felt as if he knew me, and I felt as if he liked me, end quote. This man cannot be made into the founder of a cult, the supporter of a group. He belonged to everyone. If this book can help to establish the real rather than the legendary leader by getting closer to the man himself, I shall feel that I have done him some service. End of preamble.